Welcome to the Energetics of Being podcast, the podcast that delves into the fascinating world of human design and unravels the layers of conditioning beliefs and expectations that can influence who we become and how we show up in our lives. I'm your host, Sarah Atkins, and I'm really excited to share this journey with you. This podcast is for you if you're tired of feeling stuck, held back, or disconnected from your true self. My intention for this podcast is that we're going to shine a light on the patterns and behaviours that can prevent us from fully expressing our authentic self. Together, we'll uncover the tools, insights, and practices that can empower you to release the limitations that no longer serve you. We're going to tap into the power of energy, intuition, and self-awareness to unlock your true potential so that you can live a life that aligns with your authentic self. Join me each week as we engage in thought-provoking conversations with experts, practitioners, and individuals who have experienced their own profound transformations. We'll explore topics such as human design, gene keys, astrology, holistic approaches, coaching, neuroscience, and psychology. We're going to draw from a rich tapestry of wisdom to help you navigate your own personal journey of self-discovery. So whether you are new to human design or have been on a path of self-discovery for years, this podcast is for you. This is your invitation to step into your power, embrace your uniqueness, and create a life that resonates with your soul's deepest desires. So, if you're ready to dive in, let's go. Hello there. Welcome to the Energetics of Being podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by Katy Murray on today's episode. And Katy is a soul guide, a somatic coach, and a women's circle facilitator. And it's funny because I don't know if I'm slightly mortified by this, but also completely joyful because Katy and I have known each other for almost 20 years. So there's part of me that's like, I can't be that old, so that can't be possible. It's also from another lifetime, but I'm thrilled that we still are in each other's lives because, you know, sometimes you meet that person and it's just so easy and there's something that immediately clicks. Katy was one of those people for me. So I'm really excited to introduce Katy to you and share what wonderful things that she does with the rest of you that are listening. Hi, Katy.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for that gorgeous introduction. And I certainly feel like our souls have woven together for several lifetimes because we keep kind of being drawn together. And whatever different direction you go in or I go in, we kind of end up being drawn together again, which is just amazing. But thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about your podcast and all that's going to involve.
Me too. It's been a long time coming, if I'm honest. It's funny because I never really see myself as someone that instigates thoughts or ideas. Like, I don't consider myself a thought leader. I said this in one of my episodes. I always find that a bit of a wanky term, if I'm honest. And if you know me, which you do, I'm not that sort of person. However, this year in particular, last year was really transformational for me. It was like a whole kind of death rebirth thing. And this year I feel very much called to kind of share the journey and some of the most amazing people that I've had the pleasure to work with, get to know, and but be an amplifier, I suppose, for this journey that we're on. Because this podcast is all about conditioning, all the behaviors and habits that we end up developing through our life experiences, traumatic stuff that comes through karmically, genetically, all of those things, and how they can show up in our day-to-day lives. I had no idea, genuinely, how much stuff I was carrying around with me. And each time we talk about the onion skin in coaching, where you're peeling off a layer and peeling back a layer, and there isn't one size fits all solution. There is lots of different ways to work through all of that stuff. And I felt very much that part of my purpose here in this podcast is to share some of the amazing things that are available to us in order to help us in that deconditioning process. It's all about amplifying who we are, discovering who we really are, what feels good to us. It's about the individual rather than this collective, like there is one size fits all, which just doesn't exist, as we well know.
I love that. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And this is something I'm really, really feeling into at the moment. I'm seeing this a lot, that it's a real rising of women, and a real rising of women and the old ways and our own knowledge that is coming through, and a lot of people working together, collaborating, supporting one another. And yeah, I think, this is all part of this, is what I'm feeling. And I love that you're amplifying other people's qualities and abilities. I mean, that's just so beautiful. And it's like what you were saying about being a thought leader. Yeah, you don't need to be a thought leader. It's about holding that space for other people, and for shining that light so that other people can get to enjoy it. So I think it's such an exciting part for you, Sarah. Can't wait to hear more.
Well, it's exciting. So one of the things I wanted to sort of ask you is, why do you do what you do in particular? Because there's been definitely a shift in your journey and who you work with, and that's kind of evolved over the last couple of years in particular. So why do you do what you do?
Start with a big question. So that is a really good question. And I think the key word that you said there was, it's a journey. And we never really know where we're gonna end up. But I started this really from my own healing. And I think, like you mentioned last year, you had a bit of a death process. And I feel like I've had several. But definitely 3 years ago, I think a lot of people experienced with lockdown a really big shift in their lives. And for me, certainly, I think a lot of things came to a head. I'd had quite a stressful life situation that was coming to a close. My relationship had broken down. I, bought and sold a house. My career was changing. Then lockdown happened, homeschooling. My health was really bad. I suddenly found myself in perimenopause. I mean, it was just like every single angle. Yeah. And, I had to change. I had to kind of climb my way out of the hole that I was in. And my work was part of that. I just couldn't do the kind of less meaningful work that I was doing. I needed to go on. I need to work with self-development to go on that journey. From there, I found coaching, which I learned so much from that. I met so many amazing people, and it was really the beginning, but I was like, there's more.
Yeah.
So from that, then I wanted to work with the body, because there was so much to uncover there, and through my own process of having an autoimmune disease and having quite a lot of illness and depression since I was 11. That had been such a big part of my life. It seemed that, maybe this is my purpose, to work with the body and to understand the nervous system and to help uncover this for other people too. So I started on the somatic coaching journey, which was also amazing and has really helped me understand that and understand the nervous system and the role that plays. But there was still more. So now I've broadened into a wider spirituality, and particularly divine feminine, working with women, and exactly what you've been talking about, this kind of rewilding process.
Yeah.
Letting go of all this conditioning, this programming, the systematic stuff that's so beyond our control. And this is really where my fire is being lit, because a lot of the self-development industry does look really just at the individual and individual's responsibility for change. But actually, like, so much of this stuff is out of our control. It's things that are so part of our belief system that we don't even see that. And and I want to create a healthier space for individuals, for women, that supports growth and create, I guess, the more healthy archetype for us to grow alongside. Because at the moment, I think we're learning from a lineage of people that have already been broken by the system.
Yeah.
And we don't really understand where it's really hard to heal. And so I want to bring back that healthy archetype. I want to bring back conscious community that will grow. And I want to reconnect women to their roots, really, and their ancestral lines, the stories that we would have learned from ordinarily in a kind of more tribal kind of way of life. So not much, quite a bit there.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I actually got goosebumps when you were talking about that. And it's funny. So for people that obviously don't know my past or Katie's past, we actually worked in the retail fashion industry. Like I said, we met nearly 20 years ago. And it's funny because it's taken me a really long time to kind of realize you were talking about learning from peers and more senior people who are already broken by this kind of system that we were in. And that's very much how I felt about the fashion industry, if I'm honest. If I reflect back on my time there, yes, it was largely a female dominated industry. However, the energy there was very, very masculine. And I got really good at just playing the game, which I now see kind of massively eroded my sense of who I was, who I wanted to be. And I definitely, I mean, my changing point there was in 2008 when I ended up in hospital, but not listening to signals, doing the whole kind of keep calm, carry on, like women's problems, don't deal with those. We just have to keep going. And I stopped listening to myself. It's only now with hindsight that I recognize that. It's taken me a really long time to kind of rebalance that, not only trust, but that masculine and feminine energy within.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a balance, isn't it? We need both. We both have both. And it's important that we keep that in the conversation. But yeah, also what you were saying about trust. I mean, that is just the most vital part of the work, I think. We don't trust ourselves. We've taken on so many external voices. And it didn't even occur to me to trust that, there were voices that I couldn't trust within myself that weren't for my higher good, and voices that were just keeping me safe. I had no idea about any of this. And certainly this is where some of my somatic work has really helped me to understand the different parts of myself and where they come from, and being able to disengage and separate from them a little bit. But once you get that trust, it's huge. It changes everything. Like you said, your physical health, it has an impact on that. The way you are, even in business, like the power that you have, your expression, the people that you draw in, your impact, everything. It's such a big piece. And no one really talks to us about this. But once you find it, I mean, that's it. It changes everything. And, this is what people really need to connect with, I think.
Mm. It's really interesting as well, because talking about the sort of divine feminine, I've very much been on that journey probably around 2020, funnily enough. That was like a big catalyst for change, wasn't it? But I would never have considered myself typically girly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have a brother. My cousins are all boys. I was the only girl. Most of my friends growing up in school were boys. I always felt more comfortable with hanging out with the lads kind of thing. And that still happens now to a certain extent in my in my day-to-day life. Although that being said, since doing the work, I now have a much broader female circle. And weirdly, again, I ended up teaching. And when I retrained as a teacher and we were looking at placements and things like that, my absolute thing was like, what do I not want to do? I don't want to work in an all-girls school. What did I end up doing? I ended up teaching in an all-girls school. And do you know what? It was the most amazing experience. I was there for 4 years, absolutely loved it. And I learned so much more about the different female archetypes, even within that kind of setting, that when they weren't being dominated by boys or like having any pressure on them from a patriarchal society necessarily, just seeing how much richness there is in all of those different female archetypes. So I think that was probably start of my unlearning process and kind of becoming more comfortable in female spaces. But if I'm really honest, I still feel quite, how do I put it? I used to feel unsafe, not unsafe. Unsafe is kind of the wrong word. I used to feel intimidated by being in an all-female space. And it's getting easier. But I don't know if that's because of how I was brought up. Like, and whether that's an imbalance in the masculine energy. I mean, we'll go in. For those who have listened to other episodes, they will know that I've been on a journey with my mum, and we lost my mum last year. So there's been lots and lots of healing there. And a lot of my own experience with kind of feeling comfortable in female spaces has come from that, I think. But you've been developing your work into that divine feminine and female only spaces. How has that evolved as part of your journey?
Yeah, well, I'm very, very similar to you in the sense that was really broken for me. I had mother wounding, and then I went to boarding school at the age of 11 and was bullied. And I basically at that point completely abandoned who I was because it wasn't safe to be myself.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was bullied for, just being me and not fitting in. And I didn't really know what was wrong, but carried that with me ever since. Funny enough, that's when I started getting ill as well. But I think, it's no coincidence that I've been drawn into this work. It was incredibly difficult I have like a huge fear of public speaking. So when I got this intuition that I was going to hold these circles, I was like, really? I don't know how I'm going to do this. But then I also had the sense that this is how I heal, that this felt like a softer entry point for me to get into holding these spaces and doing the speaking. And I kind of just had to go with it. But what I noticed in terms of what you said is it's something completely different to me to being in a sacred space with women who are there to be authentic and there to be open and share, to being in a space when you're with the wounded feminine and, people are using those adaptive behaviors of like gossiping, sort of bitchiness and that kind of fakery that you get. And it's funny because I've had such a journey this year, particularly of being in spaces with women. And I thought, what, I've got this nailed. I'm totally brave now. It's fine. And then I went to an event that was all women, and I literally walked in and felt energetically, I don't belong here. It was really, it felt like they weren't operating at my frequency. So that was really interesting. It's like, okay, there's a difference still when people aren't really tuned into this work yet. They're still carrying some of this wounding. That's a completely different kettle of fish to women that are really there to be open and authentic and kind of have some self-awareness. So I think, there's still work for me to do with my approach of women, but, there's still work for everyone else to do. There's so much in the system that still, needs the work.
That's so interesting though, what you said, because I definitely feel that where I've walked into some space and I think, oh, I'm in the wrong place. Like, you are not my people right now. And I've always thought that that's just me being a bit weird. And I mean, I fully own my weirdness. I'm quite happy with this. I'm quite comfortable with this now. And it's funny because I had this experience at a networking event. And almost the moment I walked in, I thought, oh, I need to kind of turn around and run. But this lady welcomed me in, and it was an in-person thing local to me. And I just felt really awkward. Like I felt like I just wanted to run. Now, from a human design point of view, I have a lot of openness. So even though I'm a generator type, I have 5 open energy centers. So I know that I am quite prone to picking up energy from other people. But one of the centers that I have defined is my intuition, my splenic center, which gives me an intuitive hit. And you were talking about being ill and things like that from suppressing and not being your authentic self. The same thing can happen with your splenic center. If you don't listen to those intuitive hits and you stay in the places that don't feel good or stay around people that don't feel good, it can really impact your immune system, which I find fascinating.
That is so interesting. And I just wish I'd known you when I was 11. But yeah, I mean, this has totally been my story. I was very much I am literally the archetypal good girl. And I still have some of that hanging around. Like, I don't like breaking rules very much,
Yeah.
Like if I was at my kid's school, I wouldn't want to go somewhere that, I'm not allowed.
Yeah.
But I've had to let go of all that. And it's, I think, it makes perfect sense now that, I've been ill for so long. And it, I mean, it's, I try not to look backwards too much, but, you think actually that illness really, and knowing the somatics, it was my guide really to try and heal myself. I just didn't know to listen. Um, but that also has taken me on a journey and has shown me the places to go and to where to heal and, what to go to next, really. So it is a gift in a way. It has helped like show me the way. So it's really interesting. But yeah, exactly what you said.
How do you build trust within yourself? What's been your journey to sort of building that self?
Gosh, another really big question. No, that's lovely. I love that. I love this one actually. I where to start? I think definitely some embodied safety has been, I had to start with that because I really wasn't in a good way. I was very dysregulated. I'm not sure. I would say, like I would have said a year ago, I was living with a lot of trauma, but then I have a different view on it now. I'm not sure whether it was that, but putting that aside for the moment, I was very dysregulated. I had to really come back to my body and start with some really, really basic stuff, like my diet, and I did a lot of work with that. And the message to do that work came through from my soul. Actually, somebody asked me what I needed to do, what they wanted to do with my life. And I was like, I need to drink green juice and do yoga, which sounds ridiculous. And I thought it was, so I ignored it. But actually, that kind of path is what helped me to start my healing process. So the information was there for me. So that really getting my body in a better place, doing the body-based work, coming into a relationship with my body. And a lot of the development work I've done has really helped as well, because I've helped to understand how my body works, how my mind works. But really, I guess now it's giving myself permission, knowing that I have wisdom within myself, which is, I guess the message that I would give to anybody else, that we all have innate wisdom. And when we can unpeel some of the conditioning and the hurt parts of ourselves, the bits that aren't us, that wisdom, it's just there for us whenever we need it. And that's what we're here to express, I believe. So once I can tune into that voice, everything changes. And you still have moments, don't you? You think, what's going on all the time? But that has been huge. And I think as well, it's really helped me to be in community with other people. So being in some training spaces like last year and talking to other sensitives, I think understanding my sensitivity has been really, really big in my journey, because I take on so much stuff that isn't from me. Once I started to discern that, I could go, okay, it's not mine. I let go of this stuff. And I just used to give myself a really, really hard time. But, when I got depressed and wasn't being in my full power, I just would really beat myself up over it. But actually, once I started to tune into how much of that was actually my sensitivity and was being impacted by other stuff, it's really helped me to let go of that. And I feel a lot stronger in myself, self with a capital S, that self, that real me. So like everything, it has been a journey, and, everything comes at the right time. You start with the kind of baby steps of that grounding of growing your roots. And then I think it's almost like with a chakra system, you kind of move up your body to be able to get that to that higher level of strength.
Yeah. And that's interesting as well, because from what you were saying, it's been very much part of my journey as well. I'm not as highly sensitive as you, I don't think, but I do pick up on energy, and I don't think I ever realized how much I do pick up. And it's only really in the last couple of years where we've been in like shared spaces, I've gone, oh, I'm feeling this today. And I would be looking for a logical reason, like, oh, well, I must just be really tired, or I must just be this, or I must have just done too much, or I must be this. And actually, sometimes it's not always my stuff. Sometimes it's a transit from like a planetary thing, or it could be that I'm picking up on collective trauma from other stuff. I find it fascinating because my journey in parenthood has not been that easy, as I know yours hasn't either. I didn't expect it to be quite such a big part of the healing journey, really. I mean, that opened up a whole can of worms for me. But what has really helped is when I see my boys who aren't necessarily as conditioned as I am, being the age that I am, and just observing their responses and how they pick up on things. And quite often they reflect what I'm feeling. And that kind of causes me to go, oh, okay, they're feeling this. So I'll check in with myself. And it's really interesting in that kind of shift in perspective as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I do think it's, well, I don't want to say if someone's having a really bad time with their family, I don't want to say anything, but I think your kids are often a reflection of what's going on with you. And
Yeah.
it's like one the hard thing of being sensitive is then you get sensitive kids and you're like,
Yeah.
I can barely deal with my own set of emotions. Now I've got others to deal with. But yeah, it's really interesting. And yeah, often when there's something going on, there is the whole family is like, doing crazy stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, as we record this, we're just coming out of the shadow of the full moon that we've just had.
Mm.
And the full moon is always a bit of a shit show, if I'm honest, in this house. Because from a human design point of view, I live with 3 empaths. So my husband, my eldest, and my middle son are all undefined emotional centers, very empathic. Whereas myself and my youngest son, we're defined emotional. So we quite often feel all the feels, but we don't necessarily outwardly express them. What the other 3 do is amplify it back. So it's like, oh, okay, I think I've got a lid on things. Clearly haven't. So I've had to learn how to develop my own self-regulation, but at the same time, teach them. And it's interesting that shift, particularly in the last 3 years in this household, where the language has changed. Whereas we don't kind of go, oh, for goodness sake, stop being so dramatic. Like, what is going on? Like, why are you being like this? It's are you okay? Like, what's going on? What's going on with you? Is it your thing that I'm feeling, or is it my thing that we're feeling? So the conversations have been very, very different. And even with my husband, who's massively skeptical about this stuff, he now notices if he's picking up on stuff from the kids. And it's just changed not only how we parent, but how we are. Our communication is better. Like yesterday, a perfect example of this. My husband, I asked his opinion on something, which sometimes I ask just because I need a sounding board, not always because I want his actual opinion. And he has a tendency to want to fix things. He's defined here, I'm open. So, and it was interesting how my response, I was like, oh my God, the way you're speaking to me sounds really confrontational. And he kind of went off and did his thing. And on a bit of reflection, I did go out for a walk. And I was like, do you know what? It's clearly me, because actually, if I think back on what he said made a lot of sense. It was me receiving it not in the way that he intended. So we just had a quick chat. We had a bit of a laugh. And he's like, yeah, no, to be fair, you asked me this. I recognize that I was being too direct and it can come across as being confrontational. But even in that, like 20 years ago, it would have ended up in the massive row. But it's not now. We can kind of laugh and not make light of it, but actually have a sensible conversation without any judgment, or like without making anything mean anything in and just kind of take ownership for our own self, I guess.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, isn't it? It's just that simple awareness and being able to step away from the reactivity, which sounds so simple when you explain it. But when you're caught up in those emotions, when you're in it and, you see everything through a filter of how you're feeling in your body, it's hard to step away from that. And also when life's really, really busy, like, let's face it, we're all like working and kids and businesses and, all the rest of it. It's hard to kind of have that much space to be able to step away from it. So I feel like it's a real gift for us to be able to have got this knowledge and have had this learning that we can apply that to our families and our partnerships and ourselves. But yeah, it's not easy. It's like all your relationships are reflecting your stuff constantly. So until you have the knowledge, it's a completely different experience, isn't it?
So in that, and part of your journey has been kind of developing your trust, your self-trust with a capital S. How has that impacted your business journey?
My business journey. Well, it's interesting. I think my probably like a lot of us in this space, my business journey, my healing journey, my learning journey have all been woven together. But I guess the key thing for me was I had to let a lot of things die, essentially. Again, with my good girl programming, that, I was there to like, right, I'm going to do the best course available, get the certificate. And, it's all going to fall into place because I've worked my socks off and I've done my hardest. But I was to learn the lesson and again, no, that's how it works. Sorry, that might have worked in school, but it doesn't work in real life. And so I've had some tough lessons in that way. And, I've done all the like accreditation and the courses, I've twice certified as a coach. But my lesson was really, I had to really let go of all that. And not that it's not like amazing learning, not that it hasn't changed my life loads, not that I don't still use it, but I had to let go of the system of thinking the system had the complete answer.
Yeah.
That, that just from sausage factory going through this process, then I was going to have the result. No, I personally, because I'm so susceptible to programming, once I realized that I had to let go of everything and really take myself out of spaces and not talk to people because I would so easily get triggered back into that way of thinking. I had to step away, do lots of meditation and be in my own space and start to let my own voice come through and my own wisdom and to really trust that. And once I started doing that, that is when everything started to change for me. And that's when you really, you do connect to your soul and you start to understand what's really for you. And, that is unique and beautiful and magic. And that's what people want to see and what people are attracted to. And you've got your intuition and you can be led by that. And it's incredible and it's powerful. So for me, it was absolutely letting go of those systems. But obviously the real beauty is that I do weave in these systems. So I do refer to them. They're part of my journey, part of how I got here. They're still part of my work. And once I'd stepped out of them for a while, I can bring them back in and make my own thing. And it's really funny because over the last 6 months, as I've been meeting more people in the wellbeing space, in the spirituality space, I hear this a lot from people. They say, do you know what? I've done all these modalities. I've done all this training. I have all the things, but I'm struggling how to bring them all together and what it all means. And I do really feel that this is a thread that's happening right now, that we're kind of being challenged to bring our own things together, weave the threads of all the things that are available and make our own creations and our own modalities and our own ways of healing. I think it's like a really exciting alchemical time. And certainly that's my journey. But I think so often I don't really know what I'm doing, but I feel like I need to do this, or I feel like I need to get some drums now, and then something will happen. And you just follow the small things each time and it leads you to something else. Honestly, it's like slightly mental, but completely amazing way of following life and work and business. And it's led me on just such a magical journey. I love it.
I see that very much at the moment. And I've been on that journey myself when it's so funny how, but I don't believe in coincidences, but there's a reason we're having this conversation. But literally prior to having this conversation with you, I've been writing and scribbling on my notepads. And I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I've got so many things, so many certifications in different things. And I know that I've done them all for a reason. But now it's a case of bringing it all together. It's almost like you say, it's unlearning the structure. So that it was great to learn the knowledge and actually develop the understanding and start embodying it. So I'm kind of going through the embodiment process at the moment as a way to bring it all together and come up with my own way of doing things, because my way may not be the same as your way. We both have a healing capacity to the work that we do, But different people need different things and different aspects. And this is one of the reasons that with the industry that we're in, and this is why I guess it's such an exponential growth industry in particular with the kind of wellbeing space, is that there isn't a one size fits all. And that is okay. One of my spiritual mentors, like, her message all the time is that trust your intuition. There is no wrong way of doing this. Like, as long as your intentions are good and you follow what feels good for you intuitively, and it's the same even if you're a coach, you follow the threads intuitively. You don't think, oh, what's my next question? What's my next question? If a question appears, just place it on the table. And if your client wants to answer it, then awesome, go with it. If they don't, equally, that's okay. You've placed it there. And even if they don't answer it there and then, quite often what I have found is that they might not feel okay about answering it in the session, but then I might get a message like a couple of weeks later or in the follow-up session. I had this scenario a couple of weeks ago where my client was a little bit defensive in the session. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to push. I'm just going to take a step back and leave it. In the following session, they were like, so you know that thing that you asked me and we talked about this? Well, actually, I've started noticing this, and it's made me think about this differently. So we ended up having like a really open conversation about the very thing that they were avoiding in the previous couple of weeks. So sometimes it is just about trusting and unfolding. I love this word unfolding at the moment. I see it everywhere, and it's the best way that I see that describes everything.
Yeah.
Everything will unfold as it is meant to. We unfold and let go of whatever it is that doesn't serve us, and it's just unfolding.
Yeah, it's like everything has its own divine time and plan and will. We don't need to. I think that we've been in a place where we've tried to manipulate and control everything. And that's what's caused a lot of the problems. Actually, we're living, or we should be living, in alignment with the earth and with natural cycles, and let things unfold as they're meant to be. And we're powerful creators. We work alongside it and we wait for the thing to present itself. And if we let it, it will do. And it's funny, I was saying about I've been having this thing about getting some drums. I want to run drum circles. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to try and get some funding to get some drums. And I've been on a bit of a weird, it distracted me for a couple of weeks. And then I turned up at this lady's house that I'd met just randomly the other day, and she had a big box full of drums, and we're going to run some drum circles together.
Amazing.
It's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
That's so funny. As long as you don't feel the need to have to learn how to drum.
No, it's just innate.
Okay.
We're going to give it a go. So I feel like, things just turn up for you. And if you trust, if you're open to it, if you're not attached to how you think they should come to you, things will come. So that's a bit of a random detour. I can't remember what we were talking about now, but they're just so, it's fun when things like that happen, isn't it?
Yeah. But I do find that I think the more in tune I get with myself, the more things like that happen where, I don't know, maybe I choose to go a different way on my dog walk and I end up meeting up with somebody and having a random conversation with them, but it's actually a really rich conversation. And like I shared on Instagram stories a few months ago, I was on my way to a physio appointment and I used to catch the lift because the physio department was on the 4th floor. On this one particular day, I decided, you know what? I want to walk up the stairs. For no reason. I just decided in that moment I was going to walk up the stairs. I got to the 2nd floor and came across this poor old gentleman who'd actually hurt himself and got stuck, basically. But because it's a new building, there's nobody there. So they wouldn't have found him. And the lady at reception, she said, thank goodness you took the stairs, because he could have been there for ages, because nobody uses the stairs. It was just, I just so happened to make that decision and I listened to myself in that moment. It's just synchronicity, isn't it? But I think the more we do rather than question ourselves, like, why do I feel like that? Why do I want to do that? What? Just, okay, I decide I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I have no idea why I want to do that. It's fine. I'll just go with it and then see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes, it's hard because I think so many of us have a lot of fear patterning. And quite often, and that's quite a reactive thought or process that comes through.
Yeah.
So it does take some discernment from that. But I think this is where like somatics can be quite helpful because they tend to feel quite different. So reactions will come through to me quite quick. Whereas intuition's more of a rising. It kind of rises up my body and feels like opening, warm. Whereas reaction makes you almost, if you think of fight or flight, it is making you want to act. It's like that,
That's the best description I've heard of that. Yes, I agree with you. When it's kind of a reaction, for me, it's like a tightness, like a sudden clenching almost.
Yeah.
Whereas the intuitive, like, it is a rising. It is I'm curious. It's more curious, I think.
Yeah.
Rather than reactive.
Yeah. Like what's that? What's here? And I think, it'll be probably slightly different for everybody, but it's one of those things that you can journal on or contemplate or take some notes on and kind of like see, when, how did I feel when I had that knowledge about that, taking the stairs, what did that feel like for me? You can kind of get to learn it and discern it.
Oh, I could talk to you for hours, Katy. Absolutely. I love this. If people wanted to find out and come and seek you out, where are you hanging out these days?
Mostly on Instagram, so at Katy Murray Coaching, and also on Facebook. I think I'm at katy.murray.coach on Facebook.
Okay, fabulous. We will share all of those details in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. Who in my bag. I've actually had the pleasure of having a somatic coaching session with Katy, and it was just amazing because, let's face it, how often do we take the time out just to kind of sit in our own presence, in our own body, and actually listen to what's going on? So it really is a beautiful process. And you're hosting some Divine Feminine circles, aren't you? And whereabouts were they?
Yeah, I'm doing a women's circle, so once a month in sort of Wendover Tring in Buckinghamshire. But I'm doing lots of other little events. I've got a retreat coming up in September. Sorry, I forgot then. And also like cacao and drumming in August. So I'm going to have quite a few bits and pieces going on over the next year because I think that in-person connection is just so important. But probably some online circles and things as well. Maybe like a couple that we run over 6 weeks and stuff like that. There's going to be all sorts.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my lovely. Take care, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you all again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Energetics of Being. I hope you found our exploration today both insightful and inspiring. And if you resonated with what you heard today, I invite you to subscribe, rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform, whatever that might be. Your feedback is really invaluable and it helps us to reach even more listeners on their own journey of self-discovery. And remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. You can connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram under the handle @sarah.m.atkins, or you can find me on Facebook just as Sarah Atkins. You could even come and join my Facebook group, The Energetics of Being, where you can share your thoughts, questions, or your own personal experiences. I would really love to hear from you and continue our conversation there. I am on a personal mission to bring you thought-provoking conversations and practical insights to help you break free from the conditioning that holds you back, allowing your true self to shine brilliantly. And as we close out this episode, take a moment to reflect on what you've learned today. How can you apply these insights to your own life? What steps can you take to further align with your own authentic self? Thank you again for listening. I really do appreciate you choosing to spend some time with me. And until next time, remember that you are a unique, once-in-a-lifetime expression of the universe. Embrace your individuality, trust your inner wisdom, and keep shining your light brightly. Take care, and we'll catch you in the next episode of The Energetics of Being. Stay curious, stay authentic, and stay true to you.